Hey there, friend. Richard G's on the move again. Taking steps to clear the mind, leaving worries far behind, where every path feels like home, and you never walk alone. It's a welcome, open space, lit by kindness, filled with grace. Yeah, everybody get to know Jesus' name. Everybody gets to know Jesus' name.
Have you ever treated prayer, or honestly even just like general desperate wishful thinking, like a giant cosmic magic eraser?
Oh, man, all the time.
Right. You know the urge, you hit a snag, maybe something trivial like wishing you could just blink and a massive traffic jam would vanish.
Yeah, or wishing your partner would magically realize there actually is a correct way to load the dishwasher.
Exactly. And it happens to be your way,
Like
obviously.
Greasely.
But then, you face a real massive life crisis,
Yep.
a medical scare, maybe a financial cliff. And your immediate biological instinct is to just aggressively rub the problem out of existence.
You just want it gone, instantly, no trace left behind.
Yes, you want the shortcut. But today, we are taking a deep dive into a text that fundamentally challenges that instinct.
It really does, because it goes against everything we naturally want to do.
It does. So we're looking at a framework called Praying Through the Trials, a script for spiritual endurance. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack what is honestly a profound paradigm shift in how people use prayer, or even just intention, to navigate hardship.
And we are really exploring the transformation from trying to pray problems away to, well, learning how to pray through them.
Which sounds simple, but it's huge.
It is huge. We need to establish the stakes right up front here, because this is far from just some exercise in semantics.
Right, it's not just swapping out a few vocabulary words in your morning routine.
No, not at all. This text is proposing a radical rewiring of your relationship with adversity. I mean, it basically dictates the difference between a crisis that completely shatters your worldview and one that, ultimately reconstructs it into something stronger.
Okay, let's really unpack this, because the core shift here is just fascinating. Before we apply this to the really messy avalanches of everyday life, we need to understand the mechanics of what the source actually means.
Right. We need definitions.
Exactly. So first, we have the praying away concept. According to the text, this is the act of demanding that God or the universe remove every difficulty instantly. It's that magic eraser approach we were just talking about.
Which is a perfectly illogical biological response, by the way.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. When we encounter pain or a threat, our brains are not looking for character development. I mean, the amygdala, our fear center, it doesn't distinguish between a charging saber-toothed tiger and a terrifying email from HR.
Oh, wow. That puts it in perspective. It just screams, eliminate the threat.
Exactly. So naturally, if you have any sort of spiritual framework, your first instinct is to demand that God just delete the obstacle and give you your clean slate back.
But the text says that psychologically and spiritually, that's incredibly fragile, right?
It is
Yeah.
extremely fragile. And that's where the text introduces the alternative, which is praying through.
And this is defined as asking God to walk with us right in the middle of the trial.
Right. Instead of asking for an immediate extraction, the focus shifts. You start asking for strength, for wisdom, for character development.
And just an abiding presence while the storm is actively raging around you.
Yes.
I was actually trying to visualize this while I was reading the notes. And it feels like, okay, imagine you're stuck on a really dangerous, freezing mountain peak.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Praying away is basically getting on the radio and demanding a helicopter immediately airlift you off the summit. You don't want to deal with the elements. You just want to be back in your warm living room.
Right, you want out.
But praying through is asking for, like, the heavy-duty climbing gear, the oxygen tanks, and an expert guide so you can actually hike over the mountain safely.
I really like that visual. But let's take the mechanics of that just a step further.
Okay.
If you take the helicopter every single time you face a difficult incline, what happens to your legs?
Oh, They atrophy.
Exactly. Your muscles atrophy. You become completely incapable of navigating even a small hill on your own.
So the praying away mindset is literally a recipe for spiritual and psychological atrophy.
It is, because if your entire worldview is built on the expectation that God will instantly remove any obstacle you complain about, what happens when you face a mountain that doesn't immediately vanish?
You crash. You assume the radio's broken.
Right.
You think you did something wrong, or worse, that you're entirely alone and unheard.
And that is a straight, greased chute to despair. It creates a massive crisis of faith.
So the climbing gear framework, the praying through, it protects the individual from that despair. It builds a psychological safety net.
Yes, exactly. If the mountain doesn't disappear, it doesn't mean your prayer failed. It means the prayer is now actively functioning as the oxygen keeping your brain clear while you climb.
Wow. And what's crucial here, and the text is very clear about this, is that it doesn't say you are never allowed to ask for the pain to stop.
No, it completely validates the desire for relief.
Right. But the default posture shifts. The baseline attitude becomes anchored in that very old piece of ancient wisdom. Not my will, but yours.
Which means you aren't ignoring the pain, you're just surrendering the outcome.
Yeah. Which brings us to how this actually looks in practice. Because the source gets highly specific with actual scripts for some very common crises.
Let's get into those.
Let's start with a really heavy one, a sudden health diagnosis. I mean, the brain just goes into absolute overdrive here.
Oh, absolutely. It is arguably one of the most terrifying losses of agency a human being can experience.
Yeah, because suddenly your own biology is the threat. You can't just run away from your own body.
No, you're trapped.
So naturally, the first instinct is cure this right now. But the script provided in the text for a health diagnosis takes a totally different route.
What does it say?
It goes, Father, if it's possible, remove this, but even if not, let your grace be enough. Produce perseverance and hope while I walk through it.
That's powerful.
It acknowledges the honest human plea. Please remove this. But then it pivots to prioritizing grace and the actual production of hope.
And that pivot is doing some incredibly heavy lifting for the human nervous system.
How?
Well, when facing a severe health issue, the panic comes from the total loss of control. You can't control the rogue cells or the test results.
Right, you're at the mercy of the doctors and the disease.
But this specific prayer script reclaims a sense of agency. It's really a cognitive intervention. You're basically saying, I cannot control the biology of this disease, but I am claiming active jurisdiction over my internal response to it.
Oh, wow. I love that phrasing, active jurisdiction over your response.
Yeah. You're asking the trial to forge perseverance. It recognizes that endurance itself is a profound form of mental and spiritual healing, even if the physical healing is, delayed.
It's like you're refusing to let the disease take your character, even if it's threatening your health.
Precisely.
That makes a lot of sense. But okay, let's move to a different kind of survival panic. The text also tackles job loss.
Always a stressful one.
Yes, and here's where I actually want to play devil's advocate for you listening right now. Because I read the script, and my immediate thought was, wait a minute.
Okay, let's hear it.
The script says, God, I'm asking for provision, but more than that, teach me to trust you in the middle of this. Use this trial to mature me.
And your hesitation is about the practical reality of, paying bills.
Yes. If I lose my job, I don't want a masterclass in spiritual maturity. I want a paycheck.
Right.
I have rent due on the 1st of the month. I need groceries. Is there a danger here of this framework just dressing up passivity as holiness?
That's a really fair question.
Like, oh, I'm just sitting here letting God mature me while my bank account drains, so I don't need to update my resume.
It's a completely valid pushback, and honestly, it's a trap many people do fall into when they misunderstand what spiritual surrender actually means.
Right, they just do nothing.
Exactly. But if we look closely at the architecture of the source material, it is actually demanding the exact opposite of passivity. The text introduces this concept of dual tracking.
Dual tracking. How does that work when you're in a total panic state about money?
Well, human psychology hates ambiguity even more than it hates negative certainty. And being unemployed is basically living in the ultimate ambiguous waiting room.
It really is.
Yeah.
The not knowing is awful.
So dual tracking is how you survive that waiting room without completely losing your mind. You are simultaneously dealing with the practical external reality of the problem while actively allowing the internal reality to mature you.
Oh, okay. So you're aggressively applying for jobs, updating that resume, reaching out to your network.
Right, you are actively seeking the provision you prayed for.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
But while you are doing the terrifying, exhausting work of job hunting, you are actively managing your internal state. You're saying,
Yeah.
while I am trapped in this uncomfortable space, I am going to use this pressure to build my capacity to trust rather than just spiraling into anxiety.
Ah, I get it now. So the external work keeps you moving, but the internal prayer keeps you from having a full-blown panic attack while you do it.
Exactly. You're working on the external solution, but letting the situation work on your internal character.
Okay, I am completely on board with that. Let's see how that dual tracking applies to the third everyday scenario relationship conflict.
Oh boy. This is where the desire for the magic eraser usually hits its absolute peak.
Without a doubt. I mean, when there's tension in a house or with a friend, the prayer is almost always, Lord, please fix this person.
Make them see I'm right.
Yes,
Yeah.
please rewire their brain so they realize I am right and they are wrong. But the script here completely abandons that.
What's the phrasing for this one?
It says, Lord, I want reconciliation, but while we're in this tension, give me your love and wisdom to respond like Jesus, not my will, but yours.
What stands out to you about the mechanics of that specific script?
Well, I have to assume it's entirely about shifting the focus off the other person. Like if I can't force them to apologize, I guess I have to actually look at my own behavior.
Precisely. Relationship conflict is just so often characterized by a desperate attempt to control the other party.
Right. We just want them to change.
But this script acknowledges an uncomfortable reality reconciliation takes time, and it requires mutual effort that you simply cannot force.
Yeah. Notice the phrase, while we're in this tension. It completely accepts the discomfort.
It does, and the text actually draws on the ancient historical account of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane here,
Oh, right.
which is really the ultimate historical archetype for sitting in excruciating, unresolved tension, facing a crisis, and choosing alignment with a higher will rather than demanding an immediate escape.
It's highly active emotional regulation, really just disguised as a simple prayer. You aren't just enduring the silent treatment.
No, you're actively asking for the wisdom to not make the situation worse with your own reaction.
Exactly. It lowers the temperature of your own nervous system instead of trying to control theirs.
Which is the only thing you actually have control over anyway.
So true. Okay, so we spent all this time talking about how we handle our own personal mountains. You know, the health scares, the job losses, the arguments at our own kitchen table.
The everyday avalanches.
Right. But the source makes a fascinating conceptual leap halfway through. It asks, what happens when we look up and realize the people leading the expedition, our bosses, our politicians, the people steering the ship, are caught in the exact same avalanche?
It pivots to interceding for leaders.
Yes, and this is a radical shift in perspective, because modern culture trains us to view leaders almost exclusively through a consumer lens.
We evaluate them entirely based on what they can provide for us.
Exactly. We critique them, we complain about the turbulence they cause, and we just expect them to be flawless problem-solving machines.
But the text pulls back the curtain on the sheer crushing weight that leaders actually carry.
It lists things like political pressure, workplace stress, spiritual attacks, family responsibilities, and it offers very different prayer targets for them.
Like what?
Well, for government leaders, it doesn't suggest asking God to make them agree with your specific political party.
Which is usually everyone's first instinct.
Right. Instead, it says, Lord, sustain this leader through intense opposition. Direct their heart and let your power be made perfect in weakness.
That is so different.
And for your boss at work, it suggests asking for clarity and endurance as they walk through this pressure.
It is an incredibly humanizing intervention. I mean, it forces you to remember that the person in charge is actually a person.
Think of a leader like a submarine. When a submarine dives deep into the ocean, the pressure on the hull is absolute.
It's coming from everywhere.
It is crushing, and it is constant from every single direction. You don't pray for the ocean to disappear. That's the environment they operate in.
Right.
You pray for the hull of the submarine to hold strong. You pray for the structural integrity to withstand the crushing depth.
It's a vetted analogy, but let's humanize it even further because unlike a titanium hull, leaders actually possess nervous systems.
Right, they're human.
When the pressure at those depths gets too high, a human hull actually groans. It fractures. They don't sleep. Their blood pressure spikes. They make decisions out of sheer fatigue.
Yeah, we've all seen a stressed out boss make a terrible call.
Exactly. So when you begin to intercede for your boss's endurance, when you actively pray for their structural integrity under pressure, it operates as an empathy engine.
Because it's really hard to treat someone like a broken vending machine when you're actively praying for their survival.
Right. You stop just being annoyed by the turbulence they're causing, and you start seeing the massive storm they're trying to fly the plane through.
Exactly. It rewires your own resentment. You move from an adversarial posture to a supportive one, even if you completely disagree with how they are leading.
Which is a huge mental shift for anyone.
It is. Which brings us, honestly, to the heaviest, most complicated part of this entire deep dive.
The hardest challenge.
Yes. Because praying for a leader's endurance is noble when they are just stressed out. But what happens when that leader or that coworker or that family member is the actual cause of the avalanche?
Right. They aren't just under pressure. They dropped the boulder directly on you.
Exactly. This brings us to the source's final application, unforgiveness.
And this is really the ultimate stress test of the praying through framework.
Why do you say that?
Because in cases of deep, profound interpersonal hurt, the desire for the magic eraser is absolute. I mean, we want the memory deleted. We want the pain removed.
Or, barring that, we want immediate, visible, satisfying retribution.
Exactly.
Well, the text provides a very specific script for this, and I want to read this carefully because the wording is crucial.
No, but
It says, Lord, this person hurt me deeply, and the pain is still real. I acknowledge the wrong. It does not make it right. But I choose to forgive them today as you have forgiven me. Set me free from the bondage of bitterness. Heal my heart and help me pray for them with clean hands. I trust you to handle justice.
there is a massive amount of psychological complexity packed into those few sentences.
There is. And there's one specific caveat in there that I just vigorously highlighted when I was prepping for this.
Which part?
I acknowledge the wrong. It does not make it right. I want to make sure you, listening right now, hear that part crystal clear. Because so often, especially in spiritual circles, the concept of forgiveness gets twisted into this toxic positivity.
It really does.
It gets confused with minimizing abuse or letting someone off the hook or gaslighting yourself into pretending a traumatic event wasn't actually that bad.
And the text actively builds a firewall against that toxic positivity. By explicitly mandating the phrase, "it does not make it right," the prayer validates the victim's reality.
Yes, the injustice was real. The damage is tangible.
Exactly. Forgiveness in this specific framework is entirely divorced from excusing the behavior.
So if it's not making the behavior right and is not letting them off the hook, I have to assume this script is entirely about the victim's own sanity.
Yeah.
Right, like a psychological detox.
That is exactly what it is. It is about cognitive and spiritual liberation for the person who is injured.
Just freeing them up.
Look at the terminology used, set me free from the bondage of bitterness. From a purely neurological standpoint, maintaining resentment requires a massive amount of cognitive load.
It's exhausting.
Retaining anger burns literal biological energy. Bitterness is described here as a cage that traps the victim in a perpetual loop of reliving their own trauma.
Because carrying the demand for vengeance is just, it takes so much energy to wake up every day and maintain that level of hatred for someone.
It consumes your bandwidth. So when the text guides the individual to say, "I trust you to handle justice," it is offering a release valve.
A way out.
Yes. It allows the individual to officially resign from the exhausting, soul-crushing job of being the judge, jury, and executioner.
They aren't praying away the memory of the hurt. The scar is still there,
Right.
but they are praying through the pain of that memory to achieve personal freedom.
And they are asking for clean hands, meaning they refuse to let their own future actions and thoughts be polluted by the toxic runoff of someone else's sin against them.
Wow. So they are actively choosing to put on the climbing gear to hike over the mountain of their own resentment.
Rather than sitting in the snow, freezing, waiting for an apology that might never come to magically airlift them away.
It is the most courageous form of praying through that the text offers. It requires confronting the absolute darkest parts of human interaction and choosing your own endurance and freedom over a state of perpetual victimhood.
It really is.
So let's take a step back and look at the whole picture here. We started by unpacking that deeply human, completely understandable, yet totally flawed expectation of praying away our problems.
The magic eraser, the helicopter off a mountain.
Right. And we traced how shifting from that fragile expectation to the resilient posture of praying through changes the entire landscape of a crisis.
We saw how asking for the climbing gear, asking for strength, wisdom, and a grounding presence in the middle of the storm literally rewires our brains.
Yeah. Whether you are facing the biological panic of a health scare, the ambiguous waiting room of unemployment, the messy tension of relationship conflict, or the deep, exhausting wounds of unforgiveness.
In every single one of those scenarios, the shift from away to through preserves your agency.
It really does. It lowers your panic, builds empathy for the people around you, and fosters a deep, enduring psychological resilience.
It forces us to stop treating life's hardships as mere system errors to be deleted and starts treating them as the very terrain where our most profound growth actually occurs.
So I want to ask you directly, as you are listening to this right now, look at your own life. Think about the biggest stressor you are facing today.
The thing keeping you staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m.
Yes. The crisis you've been desperately begging the universe to just erase. How might this framework change your approach to it?
Are you exhausting yourself, burning all your energy, trying to pray away a mountain that you are actually meant to climb?
Are you sitting in the cold, waiting for a helicopter, when all the gear you need to survive is already laid out right in front of you?
Recognizing the difference between a panicked plea for escape and a grounded request for endurance is a major turning point in anyone's life.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over long after you finish listening today.
All right, what is it?
If we truly embrace this paradigm, if we accept the idea that our hardest trials, our deepest pains, and our steepest mountains are the exact laboratories where our character is built and our resilience is forged, what does that mean for the easy, comfortable seasons of our lives?
Oh, that's a good question.
When the weather is perfectly clear, the bills are paid, and we have absolutely nothing to pray through, are those plateau moments actually the times we are most at risk of standing completely still?
The hidden danger of the plateau. That is a fascinating paradox to consider.
Think about it. Keep climbing, use your gear, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
When the storm is raging and the night feels long, when the burden's heavy and I can't go on, I will not demand you take it all away, but I'll lift my hands and choose to pray. Lord, pray me through the waters, pray me through the fire. Let your grace be sufficient, let your strength lift me higher. Not away but through it, I will walk with you in the middle of the trial. Pray me. Carrying the weights, for the heart that's breaking, for the one who waits. We won't ask for easy roads or skies of blue. We will ask for presence as we walk with you. Lord, pray me through the waters, pray me through the fire. Let your grace strength lift me higher. Not away but through it, I will walk with you in the middle of the trial. Pray me through. Even when forgiveness feels so hard to give, as I walk through the pain, Lord, you are my part.